You are listening to subscriber-only content.
Hello there, my name is Jake Kemp of the Dumb Zone, and this week I'm doing a little bit of Business Wednesday, as Dan will often do, and talk to local movers and shakers in the community. Well, I'm going to do that this week, or at least someone who is attempting to move and to potentially shake. It is my good friend, Harper Weaver.
Hi, Jake. Thanks for having me.
I just found out your first name is John.
Yeah.
From your election disclosure or candidate filing paperwork.
Yes, and the preferred name is Harper.
Harper is running for school board in Plano.
That is correct.
Never held public office, never sought public office, so I imagine this is something that will be, it would be wise of you to use as a campaign material here. So, would you like to just introduce yourself, give the background a little bit as much as you'd like? I don't know how much your personality is part of your platform, but the floor is yours.
Yeah, sure. Like you said, I've never run for public office before. A year ago, I would not have seen this in the cards at all.
Would you go to city council meetings or anything, or stuff like what? Any level of, I mean, I know you're a guy who will vote on you.
Yeah.
Ballot box, hate to see a Harper coming, but not like real active.
Yeah, not getting in there and really getting in the muck of things, and that's why I wouldn't have said this was coming. But I've got two kids currently in Plano ISD, a second grader and a kindergartner, and then I got a kid that's not old enough yet, so she'll join them shortly. And they're thriving. They're doing great. So that's one of those things when your kids are coming home with great test scores and they're reading above grade level and everything's going great, you don't necessarily feel the need to go to school board meetings and see how the machine is working. You're just happy with the results. And that changed in May last year when they announced the school closings. And I started to look into the process and said, I can do better than this. This is not being done correctly. Plano has 47,000 kids, so if you think you have the chance to improve the lives of 47,000 students, and you have the means to do so, you kind of think you have the moral imperative to try.
And what is your professional background? How are you describing that?
Yeah, I'm a data engineer. I've been a data engineer for 15 years. I've worked for a lot of different sectors, which I think works to my benefit. Like I've worked for a startup that helps fashion bloggers monetize their content. I've worked for a defense contractor. I worked for a Major League Baseball team, the Royals, won a World Series.
He's got a ring.
Yep, it's a big ring. Worked for healthcare startups. I worked for life insurance startups. So all those things are different sets of data that you have to look at differently. And so I've seen I've got a breadth and the experience of wrangling things and doing my own independent analysis on things, and that's important for a school board position because you have a lot of different areas that you need to be able to analyze. Right? It's not just school data. You have teacher performance data. You have data
traffic
on facilities. Yeah, traffic is more of a city council thing.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I just know that you mentioned like walk times in here. And things
yeah.
like that
Okay. Transportation.
Yeah.
Bus routes.
And
and managing the budget and all kinds of things. It's not just like you open up one spreadsheet and that's the school data. It's a very diverse role data wise.
Yeah, and I know that when we get emails from the school, with recapture, like there's always a talk of like this money is this money's this money's that. So
right.
It's like it's not even just that there's a bunch of different industries basically being interfaced within the school board. It's also that the money is not just like in out. It's that you have money that's for certain. The recapture thing is the one that jumps out, but I'm sure there are other things too.
Yeah, and you have different sources of money, right? Like you have the taxes that come in and the general allotment from the state. They give money per head for students, but then you also have bond packages, and there's a lot of different
at the city level.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Technically at the district level, like Plano ISD has, I think there's 7 different cities in it. It's centered around Plano, but it clips Dallas and Richardson and Murphy. So if you live on the far west side of Murphy, you're still in Plano ISD. So.
Well, I think it's really, really interesting because I think this is why partially why the other part is ego, but I think sometimes journalists, if they're smart about it, can be good politicians because they just interact with such a wide range of people and they learn how different businesses work. And yeah, it's really, I think I've always thought like you have a skill of just kind of treating everything the same. Like, I don't know how to describe that, but it's like the context of the situation. Not to say you don't care emotionally about these kids, but it's almost like the context doesn't matter. It's just, I have these numbers and I can produce a better solution with them for the same cost. So I think that's awesome. But it also helps that you really care about it.
Yeah, you have to be level-headed
more than the
here.
Instagram bloggers or whatever.
Yeah,
but the process is kind of the same.
Yeah. You eventually you get all the data and the way that it needs to be, kind of aggregated to analyze it, and then from that point you just got to leave out the emotion and get in there and that's what I provide is this is what we're describing as this type of independent analysis I can do. Because right now, I mean, every council member for every school board will tell you that everything they're doing is data driven, right? But a lot of that comes from being handed a packet saying, here's what the conclusion is, look at these fancy charts, and they support that conclusion.
Like, wow, this packet's huge.
Yeah.
You must have really grinded the numbers.
And I don't think that's acceptable.
Who is producing that packet?
The district
presently?
themselves. So the way a school board works is the public elects the school board members. In Plano, it's 7 at-large seats. So there's no districting.
District,
Yeah. 4-year terms, staggered. So every 2 years there's votes. Right now there's 4 seats up. 2 years from now there'll be 3 seats up. Rinse and repeat. It's the charge of those people to hire the superintendent of the district, and that's the sole employee of the board.
Like a city manager.
Yeah, sort of like that. And then they do everything else. They hire deputy superintendents. They make all the decisions on who's going to, it's a massive operation.
They're given a budget for general operation.
Yeah, the Plano budget before recapture is $700 million approximately.
I mean, I don't know what is and isn't a lot, but it seems crazy.
It's a lot, yeah. It's like running a pretty decent-sized business.
Yeah, or small city, really.
Yeah. Kind of, yeah. For example, the city of Plano is going to have $630 something million worth of bond proposals this upcoming May, and that's the biggest the city of Plano has ever had. The Plano ISD just passed about 1.2 billion.
Damn.
In 2022.
Wow.
There's
That's
a
big
lot
business.
going on here, right? So the school board hires the superintendent, and then they oversee the entire operation. But then the other role that the school board is supposed to have is providing oversight over that operation. So they have to come back with the big decisions and run it by the elected officials, and that lets the elected officials, the only 7 elected people, because you can't be electing every single person to this operation. That would be chaos, right?
Right.
Lets them provide oversight over that to be the public mouthpiece.
I smell a problem.
Right. And so that's where you need to have independent analysis come in. Otherwise, things can get by you or things can slip through the cracks. And what we have, the problem right now that I've observed, like I talked earlier, and I'm sure we'll talk about this more, the school closing stuff was my catalyst for getting into here, but I've watched hundreds of hours of school board meetings, and not just from Plano, from surrounding areas as well, to see what's different between Richardson and Plano, Garland and Plano. And Plano has a problem with complacency. The school board and the district are on the same team, buddy, and that's a problem. That's the exact opposite of what the role is supposed to be. Not that the role is supposed to be like
adversarial, but
yeah, exactly. They're not supposed to be starting fires and working against the district, but the supposed to be asking critical questions at these public meetings, which happens from time to time, but it's rare and it's not often enough, and it's not from enough of the school board members. And occasionally voting no on something. Wouldn't that be nice?
Did you say there were some shocking numbers?
Yes, it's 7-0.
Shocking to me.
We saw a unicorn this Tuesday, a 6-1 vote. Which you only see about 3% of the time.
Wow.
And it's just imagine getting 7 people, independent people, on the same page for 97% of what you do.
It's not,
They're not really independent people.
Common sense would indicate
point,
that that's not they're not operating independently. No, and that's why I don't really have an opinion on this because it's been a long time since I thought about it. But obviously, this is part of the risk of at-large seats.
Yeah.
But certainly there are problems with doing it the other way, and sometimes people end up in jail, like JWP for being your man downtown. That happens way more in those type of situations where you have like patron politics, But in any case,
and there's also halfway measures. So the Texas Association of School Boards has recommendations for how to run these things. And so what you can do is you have 7 seats. You can also do a combination.
I have heard of that, actually.
You can have 4 at-large seats and then 1. And Plano has 3 senior high schools, so they have 3 feeder patterns, east, west, central. So you could have 1 at-large seat in each of those. Or not 1 at-large seat, 1 district seat.
Yeah,
and
that
then
makes
4
sense.
at-large. Or 2 district seats in each of those and 1 at-large seat. You can mix and match.
So you may not have this information, but this would not this would not indicate that this is not also a problem, but is that level of coalescence agreement of within the 90%, is that common with other school boards?
It's not as bad with other school boards, but it is pretty common.
Yeah, I would think. It's a good old boys club.
And presenting a united front.
That makes sense also. But it makes more sense that the reason that you're arriving at the same conclusion is because you're being provided data from the same people that you're paying to tell you.
Everyone's getting the same packet.
Right, yeah. So at that point, that would actually seem to me like that would create more uniform response than anything else. But so how do you change that?
You run for school board. You get in there and you start.
No, I mean, honestly, when you told me that number, that was one of the first things I would tell you how to do your job. But I feel like the average person, regardless of their politics, I really think like the average person in Texas, I don't know if conservative, left-leaning, whatever, would say that's just not a tenable representation of democracy.
Yeah.
If you could just tell them that.
Looks more like theater. Than,
and most people, when told that, would say that doesn't make any sense. So I feel like that's a good entree right there.
Yeah, no, it's definitely something that I've been using at these forums and stuff that I've had to go to.
So,
which is extremely not my thing.
Yeah, when I want to talk about that. So the packet arrives. We've got this track record of just agreeing, and the packet I gather indicated we recommend closing these 3 elementary schools.
2 elementary schools and 2 middle schools.
Okay.
And it's a tough situation. And it's something, this is very annoying because it's something that a lot of people will fall back on and use as a crutch, is they'll say, this is hard work. It's necessary, it's hard work, we have to do it. No one wants to do it. And then that dismisses all the analysis that should be done in the middle. It dismisses the steps where it should be done right. So, for example, the 2 middle schools in there, I think it makes sense to close them. And
it's not because your kids don't go there?
One of them's on the same street as my elementary school. Okay. My kids don't go there right now, but it's still closing that down. I mean, I'm still I'm taking a property hit, on that. And, so I can tell you that's not why I'm campaigning, because I'm not going after both of them. They're on the same street. They're 0.2 miles away from each other. And but it makes sense from the amount of enrollment that they have, from their locations. They're both centrally located, so it's easy to move the populations out in a way, to redistrict in a way that sets it up pretty easily. if you've got like a triangle and then one in the middle, if you try and remove any of the points on the side, you're going to have a real weird boundary problem with lots of transportation issues. It saves much more money than it does closing an elementary school to close a middle school. Middle schools have bigger they have more programs in them. And so when you have low enrollment at a middle school, you start to have bigger problems. Like Armstrong Middle School hasn't finished a football season in 3 seasons. You start off with enough kids to play football. There's UIL rules that say you have to have at least, I don't know what the number is, but you can't be playing 11 kids on offense and defense.
Right.
It's a safety issue. So when as students either get injured or lose interest or have academic problems and have to drop out or move away, whatever, you got the attrition on that team. And so for the last 3 seasons, they had to cancel the program.
Yeah, so the dollar doesn't go as far per kid when you've already spent the money, right? You've already allotted for these programs, and if they go underused, there's nothing really. It's not like you get money back for you know what I mean?
Well, this one's not entirely a financial thing for this part. This is a chance to give kids programs. You need enough kids in the programs in order to have the programs.
That makes sense too. Yeah, so the way I experienced it, I found the sweet spot, right, was they opened a third high school, which meant that I was able to play, right? So like I where we are in South Lake, one high school.
Right.
And I live just as close to here as I do to where I went to high school. But then the flip side of that is, like, we don't even have enough to get out here. I didn't think of that too. So yeah, that makes it. And elementary school is kind of daycare. So
the elementary schools, they save much less money by closing them.
Right.
And they don't have a lot of those programs. I mean, they still have programs. In fact, the 2 elementary schools that are closed have very specialized programs. The one in the central Davis has the regional day school program for the deaf.
Wow, yeah.
They bus in students from all around. From other cities, not just all of Plano. They bus in kids from Richardson, McKinney, Frisco, all that. So that they can use the economies of scale and have them all in the same place, so they can have proper equipment, instruction, things like that for them. And so they're moving that to Harrington, which is 1 mile to the east. And I've got a couple different problems with that. One is you just go talk to the community and tell, and they'll tell you immediately that the problem they have with it is, like, the kids that are in Davis right now, the school that's closing, that aren't deaf, are used to being around all these other kids. They can sign with them. They can communicate with them in a way that when you move to another population, those kids are going to feel much more isolated than they are in their current environment. It's like one of the parents that went up there and stood in front of the school board at the meeting told them, it's a community that's going to take decades to rebuild, because it's not just a switch you throw on it. You can't just throw some money at it and teach kids how to sign and teach them how to communicate.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, I would imagine some of it would be offset by the whole student population moving. So some of those kids. So is the idea?
Some of the kids, half the kids will be.
And also, though, like, would they all be just going to one other elementary?
So they'll move the day school program over there.
But what about? So I guess what I'm saying is there currently an elementary with the capacity to simply assume a full another elementary?
No, they're splitting. So this elementary, I sent you a big old
I'm looking
PDF.
At it.
So if you scroll down a couple pages, you'll see these maps. Yeah. So there's one. The Davis one is the first one. So you can see here, this shows the districts. How they are now is the red lines, and then the colored sections are where they're going.
Okay.
These teal arrows, I added them to make the map much more digestible. But so you can see this arrow here is where they are. So they're moving some of the population to the west and some of it to the east.
Okay, so actually what the point I'm trying to make is, I feel like if you do it that way, it dilutes the familiarity for those kids even more. Because if you just moved all of the school to another one, there would at least be some level.
You'd at least have the friends that were there, but you're cutting that number in half.
Then it's a real problem. Mm-hmm. Or it seems like a real problem. And that's I guess one of those type of things where the average person just doesn't know that. Mm-hmm. So that's the job of the public, but also then the representation, potentially you, to make sure people know that. So is this done deal? Like you're talking like this is done.
Yeah,
It's closing.
Essentially done.
Okay.
I'm still a fat lady sings advocate, so until they bulldoze the schools, which they've announced the intention to bulldoze all 4.
And so your hope is to
on.
explain that this is, if you were to be elected, general election is what, May 2nd, May?
May 3rd.
2nd, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
early voting on April 22nd. Elections on May 3rd.
So if you were elected, your hope would be but to prevent this from happening further.
Yes, using my skill set to make sure that, and that one's not the one I have the biggest problem with.
The 2 elementary, 2 junior high situation?
Well, no, the second elementary school is the one that I have the problem with.
Okay.
Now, full disclosure, it is my kids, but I think that is just it's a coincidence that I have that skill set. I have the ability, the financial means to be able to put work aside for a bit and get into a race for a totally unpaid position where you have to finance a campaign. I just don't think they saw that coming from this. So let's take a look at the other. You can see the other maps here, and this is what I talked about earlier. The middle schools just kind of everything goes out.
Yeah.
And then if you look at the 4th map, that would be Foreman, and it looks like it's drawn by Napoleon.
Okay.
There's 12 different areas where people are moving. Our students are being rezoned from one school to another. Foreman goes out into 5, but then they're rezoning the entire district.
That's crazy.
And it's because the 3 schools that have the biggest problem with unused capacity, are all the ones that are on the far east here. So there's 3 schools that are in Murphy.
So you're just removing the center of the district and dispersing it out.
And then just trying to flush a lot of it to the east to get rid of where the actual capacity issue is.
Okay.
So,
jeez,
that introduces all kinds of problems. And some of them I don't even know where to start. But we'll start here. This is the one that gets me the most, is that school is also, okay, so you can look at this map, you can see this key over here. It tells you these little markers are where the apartments and high capacity housing is. And so you can see Foreman is not surrounded, but it's got 4 high capacity things very close to it. And you can see these numbers here, how many students there are there. So Foreman has hundreds of kids that walk to school.
Yeah, so these, okay, yeah.
Foreman's over 80% economically disadvantaged. Foreman's over 2/3 Spanish-speaking, bilingual. Like I said earlier, both the elementary schools have specialized programs. Foreman has a dual language program. And so you can see all the other... Foreman's right in the central of the east cluster, and it's the farthest south and farthest east of any dual language program. There's other dual language programs over here, but this entire section buses to Foreman right now. And so they're taking that away, and they're going to bus to here and here instead. So all the students that are busing...
Like double.
Yeah. And there's more problems with transportation too, right? So you got kids walking there right now. Because Foreman has such a high economically disadvantaged population, they're the only school in Plano that qualifies for universal free breakfast.
Okay.
Other schools have programs where you can have, vouchers for reduced or free breakfast. They're not the only school with breakfast. A lot of people jump on my case when I start presenting that. They're not the only school with breakfast. The only ones where the cash registers aren't on. You walk in and grab pancakes. And that's important for a population like that because bilingual populations are sometimes harder to reach out to. They don't respond to emails as much. It's harder to inform them that, hey, you need to fill out this piece of paper if you want your kid to be able to have free breakfast. And so at Foreman, they don't have to do that. They walk in, they get breakfast. And for some of those kids, it's going to be their best meal of the day. Now they'll be on a bus. So right now, doors open at 7 o'clock. School starts at 7:40. And if you show up at 7 o'clock, you'll see kids already walking across that field to go to school. Those kids will now be waiting at a bus stop before 7 o'clock and showing up to the school just as, the bell's about to ring and won't even have time for that meal, even if they qualify for free or reduced. But this is one of the things that just didn't get evaluated. And this is where it's not just data. That's the thing, right? Here, we're talking some numbers here and there, but it's also just scrutiny. It's the like the inner desire to just never say, okay, shrug, okay, whatever. It's just being critical.
Yeah, I mean it's
not
really
being complacent.
Again, to go back to the thing that you would just say to somebody that maybe you wouldn't have to explain because they deal with it. It's just like there's just no way you think that an idea that was not challenged at all is the best one. No one is. What sort of pushback is there? Who's presenting the alternative option? Because in a weird way, they probably are just looking at data. Like, they're not thinking about the qualitative part of it, the impacts of it, the boots on the ground part of it at all. So that part's screwed.
And we can go through some of that process.
Data, I don't know. I mean, they obviously are coming up with something saying this is the only way to do this,
and
right?
That's the big problem is they do publish their process. They have a committee they put together called the Long Range Facility Planning Committee. And they have like these things they call guiding principles, where so the community is going to be made up of not people from the district, but will be advised to some degree by the district. It's made up of parents, of teachers, of business leaders, people from the East, West, Central. They
try to get
a committee, 72-person committee, which I find to be a little bit absurd. There's too many people in my estimation. Like it's.
Unless they're able to maintain a 97%, because then that's just straight up Pyongyang impressive.
So, and then they walk through this framework of, hey, here's how we're making these decisions. Here's what we're going to consider. And then they'll tell you, like, they're considering things like transportation. Time spent on bus is the metric they throw out there. And then it didn't happen. They didn't do it.
It's not present. It just says we're going to.
The framework they laid out does not come to this conclusion that they come to. And I can tell you why, too. It's because before they had this committee, they had another committee, the Future Forward Task Force, which they...
Ooh, I like that one. That's a little better name.
Well,
zestier than Long Range.
Yeah.
I'm not commenting on the
neither
performance.
acronym. I think we need some acronym work here.
Okay.
It doesn't really roll off the tongue. The tongue's actually not involved at all. But they were the committee that put together the bond package for the last bond in 2022. And so that's the other link I sent you, that PDF that you said, I don't understand what's going on here. And I can walk you through it a bit. So the process there is again, same thing.
It just looked like to me like an agenda of we're going to decide how important we're going to rank a level of importance to these things.
Exactly.
One of them being, or a couple of them being schools.
Yeah, exactly. So they had 7 different subcommittees for things like transportation would have its own group of people who are going to look into the transportation thing. So you didn't have to have every single member of the committee looking into everything. One of them was facilities. That was the biggest one. They had the most items. So those are the ones that were going through, and they have all these items that have been identified already by the district as candidates for things to be included in the bond. And sometimes they're as simple as like the HVAC system at this elementary school needs major innovation, or the cafeteria at this one. Cafeterias was a big one in the 2022 bond. There was a lot of cafeterias that got replaced. So they go through all these different elements, and they apply a label to them. There's critical, high, desired, and not accepted are the 4 that were getting applied to things. And so you had a couple of the schools, you had 4 schools up for consideration to be rebuilt completely. And so what the committee came out and did is they said, Armstrong, which is the middle school that closed in the east, they said not considered, not accepted. They're not going to rebuild it. They're not. So the next step after this is for all of these items from all the subcommittees to go to the committee at large to rank which things are actually getting included in the package. And they said, like, we're using our expertise in the subcommittee to just remove this from consideration from the committee at large.
So Armstrong closing, not rebuilt.
Closing, not rebuilt. Now, here they're not closing it. They are sort of signing the death warrant for it, though. Because ultimately, those 3 schools, Armstrong, Carpenter, and Foreman, the one thing that came down to is they kept pointing at is the foundation of the school. The foundation. It's too expensive. And so you can see Armstrong in there, Carpenter in there, the 2 middle schools. But Foreman was recommended to be rebuilt by the community. So you had the community members getting together, and the board will tell you these talking notes over and over and over. There's teachers, parents, business leaders, East, Central, West. The community, they made the decision. Well, the community made the decision to rebuild that school. They toured the school. In some of the other meeting notes, you can see that. And they, under the advice from the district, even with the district's input, said, we would like to consider this one for rebuilding. And so the May 26, 2022 meeting notes show the district coming in and unilaterally overriding that and saying, no, this one we need to move to unaccepted. And you can see in the verbiage in there that there is an argument to the point where the superintendent has to step in and start providing providing more reasons to not close the school, but to remove it from consideration.
Superintendent commented that the east side of the district should receive more renovations and upgrade from the last bond than the central.
Yeah.
So that's why they're not going. That's why they're going to give it to the central.
Which is an absurd thing because at the same time what they're doing is they're the fourth school that was up for renovation, Haggard. The district put it as high. So remember, there's critical is the top one, then high comes in second. And the way this works is if you're high, you're not going to get in. There's unless they're going to raise taxes, which will make your bonds not pass.
Critical.
Yeah. So they're like, okay, well, actually, we want to do this, and we don't want to do that other one, which is it's totally outside their purview as the administration because it's supposed to be a committee. You're asking for community input, and then if you're overriding it at the end, then you don't have community input.
Yeah.
And that's what happened here. Because they had a plan to close this, but they would never tell you that. And the part that's really bad is the order these things were done in. So that was May 2022. Mm-hmm. The LRFP, the Long Range Facility Planning, wasn't established until October 2023, a year and a half later. So that's the one that has all the guidelines for, hey, here's how to make sure that we're doing this in a fair and equitable way. But they've already signed its death warrant, right? And if they're already willing to come in and put their thumb on the scale, like in that meeting we just talked about,
they could do it now.
They're doing it again. And those two committees have an overlap of about 20%. 20% of the LRFP is made up of the same members from the bond committee, including the chair, the co-chair, 5 of the 7 sub-co-chairs. All went from that committee to the other one.
Okay, so can you explain to me, I always like this, the reasoning for them? Like the quote I just read of like, well, hadn't done anything in the East in a while, we're gonna do something in the East, doesn't really pass. You've looked at their numbers. I'm sure you have a somewhat different take on those numbers. You're all trying to get to the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's a balanced budget, but it's the best number possible. What is it with them? Because for me, when I looked at the situation in Keller, it was very clear what was happening to me. Right? Like, I mean, I knew the neighborhood pretty well, and it's like, okay, they're clearly just trying to remove what they view as an anchor portion of their city, even though it did. I don't know. That was clear to me. This one, what is the...
Yeah, this is all budgetary. Like, we're being strangled right now from Austin. Slowly.
And I know part of it is that TC has mentioned to me things, about like the multifamily building, like zoning limitations that are putting Plano in a bit of a population bind.
Yeah, the district is, or not the district, the city is pretty much built out. And the public does not have much of an appetite for... building new multi-family places. A lot of the city council people are against it, and if your city council people are against it, it's not going to happen. And so we have a density problem there. We have a problem with an aging population in a place where we can't build too many more homes. And so kids graduate, and then families stay in that house for a while. And then we have a rising home cost, rising property costs around the city means that when those people move out, a house that might have been $200,000 a decade ago is worth $550,000 now, and that's much harder for a family that has like a kindergartner to move in and re-enter that system. Yeah. So we have declining enrollment. So we do have a problem, and it is, like I said, it's a hard problem to have and one that takes a lot of intention to fix. And We got like 70% of the way there this time around, and that's just not good enough for.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, the 2 middle schools make sense. The logic behind closing the regional day school program for the deaf makes sense to some degree. They're moving it to another school, and that other school has the footprint to be able to build a new school without closing down the original one, without bulldozing the original one. So you can do them simultaneously. Mm-hmm. Build one, move all the kids over there, then instead of having like portables and stuff like that.
Right.
But the Foreman one, it just doesn't make sense. Like the equitability problems are so massive, and so here's like another point. Like so there's 2 goals here. One is what we talked about earlier with when you consolidate these schools, it helps support the programs, right?
Athletics,
yeah,
on down to the deaf situation.
Yeah. Well, yeah. More like athletics, even like chess club, cheer club, all those things.
Okay.
If you don't have enough students, you can't have those clubs, right? So from that standpoint, I think we've done a good thing, and we're accomplishing things there. But the other side of it is also money. We're trying to save money, right? Each one of those middle schools costs over, like, it's around $1.5 million a year in maintenance operation costs to run. Davis costs $450,000 to run. Foreman costs $650,000 to run. But the process is so bad. So they had 2 meetings. They had one in May where they announced these plans. And that's, like I said, I'd never participated in this stuff before. So I got the email the night of, watched the meeting the next morning, and part of the meetings, I was so naive at this point, part of the meeting, they said, hey, if you have any questions, dig into the data. This is all data-driven. Get back to us with your comments about the data. And I was so naive, I believed them at the time. So I put together that 19-page PDF document that I sent you, and I sent it to them, and they turned around and called a special session to close the schools as quickly as possible.
Wow. Like, how quick?
I sent it on June 4th. So they're required to post an agenda for any meeting, and they have to post it 72 hours before the meeting. So I sent it Tuesday evening, and I wasn't trying to be like tactical about it. I didn't know any of this stuff. I was just like, hey, here, you might want to reconsider these things, guys. Just acne all over my face, little prepubescent.
Wearing your dad's suit.
Yeah. So I hand that report on Tuesday. And so Wednesday rolls around, they open up their inbox and they go, oh no. But they can't call a meeting immediately because you can't have them on Saturday or Sunday. Remember, there's that you have to be 72 hours. Yeah. So on Thursday, they called one for Monday. On Friday, you can't do Monday because you got the 72 hours thing. So that's as quickly as possible.
Yeah. And that Monday meeting was moving the ball closer, I suppose.
That's when they closed everything.
Okay.
Which is
they held a vote.
Not the same way that other districts handle this kind of thing.
So is there no how common is like a public referendum on these things?
What do you mean exactly by public?
Like an actual vote?
Oh yeah, no, not common. The actual vote is the vote for the school board
school
members.
Board, okay. Yeah, I was trying to think of like if I'd heard of, because you'll have like the Arlington, the stadium thing, right? You'll vote on that.
Yeah. Yeah, those are bond elections, right?
Yeah, bond. I just didn't know if. I guess also the bond election is also sort of implicitly voting for or not voting for this or that.
Yeah, those have a lot more things put together usually. Like some of them aren't. Some of them they take out single things and put them on their own thing.
You talking about pork?
Yeah,
little pork barrel.
In that May 26th one, they put a item in there that was a $130 million. They call it an event center. I like to call it a coliseum.
I saw that in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they have like graduation here in Plano instead of renting out the Star or whatever, and have basketball games. And they also and it'll bring in money. It'll be cost savings because we don't have to
pay rent.
Yeah, pay rent and pay for events at other places. And we'll sell concessions and we'll rent it out to other people. We can have like concerts here or whatever. That'll be something the community can use. But their accounting for it said that it would be a negative cash proposal, negative $500,000. So a $500,000 operating cost and $130 million of bond money for
$500,000 a year annual loss.
$500,000 a year.
Oh wow! And
which an elementary school.
Yeah. Wow.
and then $130 million from the bond budget. And the way the bond allotments essentially works is you have the ceiling of money that you can debt you can service, and if you go over some point, it raises the interest and sinking tax rates, or INS tax rates. So that would be a definite tax raise.
Yeah.
So they never do that. They don't want, because it won't pass. The public won't pass a tax raise, and none at this time. They don't have the appetite for it. So you have this fixed bucket of money that you can put all these projects in, and you got this giant $130 million event center in there that eventually got voted down because people don't want it. But that's why I was talking earlier about, well, why not just let rebuilding Foreman, be in this pool of things that to be considered, and see if maybe it edges out the event center or something like that.
Yeah, that would make a lot more sense from a democracy standpoint. But yeah, okay, so I wanted to get into the horse racy part of it. From that summer on, were you have relationships with these people?
Can I do one more thing before we move on?
Sure.
Because you were talking about public referendums, and the second closest thing that they have is these school board meetings where they close schools, right? They closed my elementary school in Coppell. Was there 99 years, Pinkerton Elementary. You'd think they give it one more, just get it over the hump. But they had 4 school board meetings, 3 what they call work sessions, and then the open session where they closed the school. And the room was packed every night. The one where they closed the school, they had 56 people show up. And that's closing one elementary school in a city that's 1/3 the size of Plano. Yeah. And you can see the same thing. You look at Allen closed schools recently, Richardson closed schools recently, and you look at the boardroom, packed. You look at the public comment, hours and hours of it. You want to take a guess at how many people got to speak at the Plano meeting?
Wow.
I can show you because it fits on 2 of my hands.
So
on the podcast listening, you'll see that.
9 speakers.
9 speakers, 8 adults and a child. Because also when they called that special session, every other meeting before, there's this protocol where you sign up the day of the meeting for a normal session and the day before for a special session. This one, remember, I said they sent out the email on Thursday. They posted the agenda on Thursday, sent out the email at 11:30 a.m. and said you had to sign up by 5 o'clock that day.
Wow. Feels intentional.
Yes, feels like intentionally suppressing public comment, doesn't it? And it worked. There was a lot of people in the room, but only 9 of them got to speak because, everyone else might have had a job.
Yeah. I feel like you've got to bring that up too. Yeah, no, that's compelling. So, yeah, no, I guess that gets into how you've been received. Have you had conversations with any of these people? It seems pretty obvious that they fast-tracked the process in response to your submission. So, what's it been like?
Yeah. So,
and how did you pick? If it's an at-large district, how did you pick the spot?
Yeah, let's start with that one. So, there's 4 seats that are up. There's 2 of them that were being abdicated. The people are just leaving. And then when I was filing my paperwork, there were 2 incumbents that were running unopposed at that point. And I picked the president of the board, who's been there for 15 years. So the hardest race out of those 4, because I think it'll do the most good. When you're talking about a complacency issue, this is where we start.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. That's an interesting strategy. Obviously it's bold, takes gumption, but it's also kind of look, the way I would look at that is I'm going to prepare and attempt to execute to my peak no matter what. Mm-hmm. And if I think that's pretty high, I might as well just apply it to the toughest draw. It's not going to change.
Yeah.
It's not if you were I'm going to try to see if I can find somebody vulnerable, you would do it any different. So it's if you're already going to put the pedal down, you're I'm just going to go for the biggest
and that's the mechanism
outcome I can get.
The mechanism for when you have a problem with an elected official is to unseat them. So that's what I'm going for.
Okay. So how quick, when did you make this known? Or let me put it this way. When did she know?
February.
Okay.
Yeah. She filed 2 minutes after the open date for. So all you have to do to run for school board is fill out about 3 pages of paperwork, go down to the city hall and get it notarized. And so, yeah, when you get it notarized, there's a timestamp on there. So the door is open at 9:30, and hers is timestamped 9:32 of like the first day.
It's a veteran.
Yep. I waited a couple weeks to see if anyone else would jump in instead. I would much rather just be supporting someone who I think is like-minded but has a better background. Not better background. I don't want to neg myself, but like a background with more experience. That's easily the hardest thing I have going for me, is convincing people that this guy that's less than 40 years old is going to show up and do a better job than someone who's been there for 15 years. That's easily the biggest hill I have to climb.
That one and the community meetings.
Whatever
you were referencing earlier of like not being your strong suit.
Oh yeah. The public forums.
Forum, yeah.
It's not something I've done before, and it's something that if you've been doing this for 15 years, you've definitely been standing up in front of these crowds and telling people exactly what they want to hear.
And so, are you in that situation? When you say public comment, it's the normal. You're at a lectern. 7 of them are up there, or are there open discussions?
So those are two different things. The public comment that we talked about is exactly what you described. It's the dais. They have. It's another thing that drives me crazy about the Plano meetings is they're like raised like 4 feet off the ground.
A federal judge.
Everyone else,
very funny. Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
Other districts they just sit at tables. And Anyway, the dais, it has the 7 school board members and then the heads of the administration, the superintendent and a handful of deputy superintendents and the chief of staff, and that's what public comment is. So you get up there, you get your 3 minutes. Next person comes and gets 3 minutes. I'm talking about public forums that are things that are put on by different entities around the area specifically for the election. So hey, come up and see the candidates, and we'll ask them 5 questions.
Okay, just the town hall-y type.
Well, town hall would imply that it's like put on by the government itself, right? So these are like they'll happen in churches and in libraries, and like I had one the other day at a country club.
It's a little too on the nose, but sure. Okay, so yeah, I think we're thinking of the same thing.
Yeah, but this one is just the candidates getting up there and talking about themselves, where public comment is the public coming and talking to the school board.
Okay, so how many of those have you held?
I mean, held 0, but it's I think 4 at this point. 1 on Zoom and 3 in person.
What do you mean then? What if you didn't hold them?
I didn't hold them. I didn't put them on. So they're different. Like the League of Women Voters put on one.
Okay, and they invite you, or do you contact them?
Yeah, you put our email address in that form I was talking about earlier, and then it gets posted, and they all start reaching out. They distribute for you.
Yeah. That's cool. Did they? Was your opponent there?
Yeah, she's been at 2 of them.
Okay.
And one's gone well, and then the one at the country club was my first time
in person.
Yeah, really walking away, shaking my head, going like, no, not first time in person, but first time that I was walking out of there like I wish I wasn't here right now.
Yeah, it's not. You
can't bat 1,000.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting, and I don't know how much you want to. Probably the answer is 0, but obviously there are parallels to the national political scene, right? It's not new. It's not new. It's probably late in the game, but in the last 15, 20 years, data is a much bigger part of the political discussion. And if obviously you see that culminating with what is happening with Doge. And whether you agree with like the aims of that or not, just the idea that somebody who understands data can have a level of trust from the public is interesting to me. Like that.
Yeah, it's generally well received when I get that platform of here's my background. People like it,
and I think people work with it. There's a guy at their job who works with it. Like I feel like your data guy is like the IT guy on steroids now. It's like this guy knows stuff that we don't, and it seems to make everything work better. And so I think that you're talking to a generation of people who are not spooked by this idea.
And it's nice showing up at the World Series ring too. That plays well.
Yeah, for sure.
This much data.
For sure. Small market, folks. Yeah, so I don't know. I think that's a selling point. You don't have to use the name, but it can be pretty clear, I think, what you're talking about when it's like, look, this is the dispassionate, for the parts that are dispassionate, case for why this is a better idea. And then also, these kids are literally going to miss the best meal of their day. And for those who are dealing with hearing disability, their lives are going to be demonstrably worse. Which way do you want it to be?
I mean, they are transferring that program, right? The kids aren't losing that program; they're just losing part of their community.
The familiarity of it too. Like,
yeah.
If you're, I mean, in general, it's pretty obvious. If you've got people who are already at a disadvantage in learning, further exacerbating that should be avoided at all costs.
Right, and that's not me like doing like
Doesn't
a
go that way all
hypothetical.
the time, though.
This is not like me hypothetically making that up too. This is from public comment from the people in that community. And then the district turns around and does like multiple Q&A sessions at the school to tell them why they shouldn't be feeling this way. And of course, they still feel this way.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, TC, our friend TC referenced to me the other day the Irving school boards that the Sands was a part of, the corporation. The Adelsons had people there. And it's a weird state. It's a weird comment on society where we still do a lot of the stuff where you're making your voice heard. It's just that it feels now purely performative at times. Like there were people, I think Jasmine even asked the question of, in that case of, Patrick Dumont doesn't have the public's trust, because of this and that and this and that, which is a true statement. Like even though it's, I suppose, an opinion, I would say the polling would back it up. And the respondent simply said, I don't agree. I think the public does trust them. And then they moved on.
Next.
And so that's what that feels like sometimes, is that you just you plan to solicit comment from people. That comment is public, and then you publicly simply choose the other option. It's just it's deflating.
Yeah,
for
you
sure.
Don't have to bring it up at all.
Yeah, exactly.
And then Plano has their meetings structured in a wild way. So the first thing that happens is the public comment. So everyone can come up and get their 3 minutes. And then they move to what's called closed session. So everyone from the dais moves into a room in the back with their lawyers, and they talk about lawyery stuff for sometimes up to 2 hours. Then they come back and talk about stuff. They talk about what's on the rest of the agenda. And that the public just leaves during the 2-hour break.
Of course they do.
They're not just going to sit there for 2 hours. Then they'll go through their entire agenda, and then at the end is where you can sign up for non-agenda items. So you can talk about whatever you want. But that's often at 11 o'clock at night, 1 in the morning.
And that is a unique structure?
Yes. Yes, it is. Like, for example, Richardson starts off with the closed session. So they go and talk to their lawyer and stuff, and then they come out at the appointed time that the meeting's supposed to start, and then do the whole meeting in front of everyone and go home.
Yeah, I think a just simple "why do we do it that way" question could be posed.
I've posed it in one of these forums.
Is that what resulted in things?
My opponent took out a notebook and said, "That's a good point," and like wrote it down. And the next couple meetings after that, they're all put together like this still. So.
Okay, it feels very similar to what we were just talking about, but that's interesting that it at least got fake wrote down.
I've got one more thing I think that you'll find interesting. And it's that the buddy-buddiness is, like I mentioned, I did not have a great showing at that country club forum, the Rotary Club forum, the other day. And it's because I've got 3 people running against me. I have one opponent, but one of those seats that's been given up, there's a hand-picked successor that has like full support. And then
of your opponent, I imagine.
Yeah, full support of my opponent. Like they'll sit there and like pass notes to each other.
And that's, you said, unopposed?
The unopposed person also showed up to a forum. Like we're getting to know the candidates here. You're going to win. What are you doing here? Well, the answer to what are you doing here is all 3 of them counterpointing me.
Wow.
And bringing up lack of experience and all this stuff. So every question, if you get like 3 minutes, I get 3, and essentially my opponent gets 9,
Wow, that's interesting.
So I have to make all my points like bulletproof and digestible and get them out there as fast as possible, because they're going to get attacked from the other side 3 times over.
Wow, that's interesting. Are there videos of these?
There are some of them. There's not that one that I'm aware of. But yeah, the League of Women Voters one, that video is available. Collin County Votes did one where it's asynchronous. Everyone showed up and just talked to a camera in front of a green screen. I think I did really well on that one. So I can share you the links if you want to put them in the description or whatever.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, closing remarks and where to send people.
Yeah, closing remarks. This is important. It's hard to do, and it's really stressing me out. So I'd really like support at the form of in the ballot box or just reaching out. You can email me at harperforpisd@gmail.com if you want to. If anything about this conversation stood out to you and you want to figure out how to donate your time or just send a couple bucks to the campaign.
Can I ask a really silly question? Is it the digit 4 or the word 4 spelt out?
FOR.
Okay. Harper
ORPISD.
Okay, got it.
gmail.com.
No, I mean, I think it's awesome, man. I think it's, it relates and hits on a lot of levels.
Again, early voting starts April 22nd. Get out there, get it done. And then the election ends on May 3rd. So make sure you get it done by then. It's a Saturday. That's a Saturday election. A lot of people aren't used to that in these off-cycle ones. So.
Okay. Yeah, I think as a dad, it's doing something a lot of us wish we could do. And I'd like to think that if I was in a situation, a lot of us would like to think listening that if they were going to close our kids' school and there was anything we could do about it, if we had the means to do so, we would go all in and we would go balls out to try to keep it from happening. And I think it's really cool you have the passion and desire to do it, but also I probably wouldn't be talking to you if you were just some regular schmegular candidate, but I think you have an interesting angle. I think you have a really interesting angle. As you said, it's not your forte to have to get out and schmooze.
My forte is the actual work, right?
Yeah.
Like, sit down, dig into something, and don't give up until I'm done with it.
For those of you who don't know him, you probably figured this out with his job description. Harper has zero douchebag in him. That's probably so he's not a BSer, and so that's why when he told me he was running, I was like, this is going to be an interesting ride. And then the more I thought about it, it's like, well, it's not that he's the smartest person in the room. It's just that he knows how to help the most.
Yeah, the line I use is I'm a parent, not a politician. And that's why also if I get up there, I'm not the zero douchebag also comes with like zero BS taken in.
Yes. Well, I'm happy for you even to be on this journey, and thanks for giving us your time.
All right, thanks for having me.
They give opinions with confidence, just like three friends, and sit in, sometimes they sit out. At a house way across town, in Mesquite, Grapevine, or Flower Mound. They said we're gonna do our show any way we want. Cumulus tried to cancel them for about a month. Those were some lonely days on such time spent airwaves, and I think it's gonna be a little weird to tune into my favorite station for 14 years, to not hear voices I'd always hear say no, 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 I don't want audio. Dumb Zone boys blending sports, comedy, and news. They took their time and paid their dues. Three cool dudes to take a leap and leave the place where you know their voice, not their face. Oh no, well maybe don't let him eat the napkin. Dumb Zone boys somehow pulled it off. What a life to just get paid to talk. It's more than just a podcast, it's a comedy show. Everyone was wondering what would happen if the Hang Zone didn't show. Well, I guess we'll never know. They have guests like local stars, Sarah Heppola, Denny Bayless, who now just tons of bars. Some 690 citizens who wanna be cool, like that Deep Bellum after What a Tool. No, 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 so what are you walking out? Dumb Zone boys are now so independent, they can say whatever, don't be offended. If you have a bit, they are cool, just send it. Dan loves salmon and broccoli. Jake drinks water jugs and vapes properly. Blake hits bombs on the course. Kemp spins and Pro Bowl divorce. Heart attack man and monthly book reports and business reports. Dan has both jeans and business shorts. He's back in guy, but so am I. It makes sense if you're in a bind. Don't forget about the roast twins. They will demolish your spirit in 2 minutes. From the Den Hyatt Talk Dance Garage, filled with bits and a fan base that also loved Entourage. So subscribe today, it's only $6.90. 2.5 hours of quality content and comedic timing. The Dumb Zone Podcast.